Hi, thank
Hey,
you for joining us.
no problem. Sorry, I had problems with my computer.
Okay. So, you we still have in how do you want me to pronounce your name?
Al-Tarifi.
Altrifi. Okay. Okay. So let me help the other panelists to join. Okay, so we are at 12:01. Dr. Abdul Wahid is trying to join us. Okay. So I think, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Jamshed.
No, I was just saying, Assalamu alaikum, Ruwa.
Alaikum assalam. How are you?
How are you? Good.
Alhamdulillah.
Sorry, Dr. Al-Sharif.
So I'm going to give maybe 2 minutes to Dr. Abdul Wahid, and once he joins, after 2 minutes, we'll get started.
Okay.
We are live
Miss
on
Sarah,
YouTube.
Abdul Wahid, and okay, let me go and send him a link. Okay, I think let's get started. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
My name is Dr. Sadiq Naveed. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm currently working as chair of Apna Young Physicians Committee for this year. The role of Young Physician Committee is to guide the incoming residency applicants. Welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening. My name is Dr. Sadiq Naveed. I'm a child and adolescent. Okay. Sorry, I had YouTube link open, but so we'll get, so first of all, I want to appreciate everyone for joining us today, especially our panelists on a Saturday, and talk about the tips and tricks of very experienced mentors, advisors and program directors with us. I will get started with the introduction. So Dr. Numaira Jamshed, she's Vianney Ruchi professor. She has a Vianney Ruchi professorship in geriatric medicine. She is program director for geriatric fellowship and medical director of COVE House Call Program, Division of Geriatrics, UT Southwestern, Dallas, Texas. Welcome, Dr. Jamshed. Dr. Al-Tarifi, hope I'm saying that name right. She's program director for internal medicine residency at Beaumont, Dearborn, Michigan. She's clinical assistant professor at Wayne State University School of Medicine. And Dr. Abdul Wahid, he's program director for family medicine residency at WellSpan Good Samaritan Hospital. He's clinical associate professor for family and community medicine at Penn State University College of Medicine and Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And then last but not least, my friend, Dr. Numan Ashraf. He's program director for psychiatry residency, for general psychiatry residency, and he's taking on more. He's also program director for addiction medicine. He is currently serving as adjunct clinical associate professor of psychiatry at KCU. So first of all, I just want to pass on the format to all of you. The format which panelists will get roughly to discuss or share this about do's and don't do's of residency interviews. So that would last until maybe for 25 minutes, and then we will move on to QA session. If you guys have any questions, just in the Q&A tool, it should be on the bottom option tool, and we will try to take on those questions that are person specific. But if there is any question that you feel like other people can benefit from, then leave it there for me, and then I can ask those questions as we move on to Q&A session with this. And I apologize for any mispronunciation. With Dr. Numera Jamshed. She has served as chair of Apna Young Physician Committee last year to share her thoughts on residency interviews, what matters, and how should one approach residency interviews.
All right. Assalamualaikum. Good evening. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Naveed, for the kind introduction. We've talked about this almost every year, and this year is the same. Virtual interviews may become the norm, even if it becomes a hybrid situation for next year. So we do have to prepare. I think what we're looking for, and we've already started interviewing for our fellowships in the virtual interview, is the interaction during the interview in asking questions, in your demeanor, how you're, dressed, how are you coming across, and even smiling. And we had interviews last year where we had people, like, they would be doing the interview and then they kept looking somewhere else, and I couldn't figure it out. I figured maybe they're looking at their phone, or it's just if you think about when you're watching a movie, right? Every subtle thing that the person does, you can actually see it, and it becomes very evident in the interviews when we are making subtle movements. So I'm going to leave everything else to I don't want to say everything about this today in the introduction, but please just be aware that every movement that you're making is very evident when you're doing this across the screen. There is no context other than what we can see. You're not face to face. So you have to learn to be able to represent yourself in a way that you would in a face-to-face interview. But we'll leave the rest to everybody else, and also lots of questions. We're really looking forward to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamshed. I will move on to Dr. Abdul Wahid, and something I share your thoughts about residency interviews, how one should approach residency interviews. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Naveed, for arranging all of this and giving me the opportunity to interact with the young minds. I would endorse whatever was just said by Namira just a few minutes ago. And my general advice is that you should approach interviews as who you are, and you should have your story ready. Story means like who you are, others want you to see who you are. And there should be a real concordance between the two. And that's what's going to matter. Now, just knowing who you are is going to help you find the best fit. I know sometimes, the pressure is so much, you just are trying hard, and desperate times you just want to get your foot in, but don't do that. My advice is look for the place which is going to match best with you, okay? And the only way you can do is bringing concordance to your story. And the second thing is that the things that Dr. Jamshed was pointing out is you don't want yourself to be on a disadvantage. You want to behave who you are, but at the same time, not do stuff which is going to put you at disadvantage to begin with, right? You don't want to portray somebody or someone who you're not, because that's going to get you in a place where you won't succeed. So just keep that in mind. And disadvantages, how you can avoid is, know the technology. It's subtle things like, for example, if you're getting into a room if you're 30 minutes up or down, it's not going to matter. But like in virtual, every second person is either in there or not there. Like there's nothing else. Whoever is interviewing you, if the person stares at the blank screen for 5 seconds, that's very long 5 seconds. Just keep those things in mind. And courtesy, common courtesy that I'm pretty sure you all doctors and all caring people, common courtesy in regular terms, like in day-to-day life, I'm pretty sure that you show that. Just keep that in mind, how you would translate that into the virtual world. That's very important. And then the last thing is don't be overpowering or anything that's going to be seen as being bothersome in the cultural context. Like I can see a number of the participants here may have a different cultural context from North America, so you want to make sure that you familiarize yourself with the cultural context, especially the personal space and interactions, how to address people, and so on and so forth. And I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards, so I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Wahid. I will go to Dr. Al-Tarifi. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. I just approached on Twitter, and you were so, receptive to being here. So thank you very much.
Of course. So I will echo exactly what Dr. Abdul Wahid and Dr. Jamshed said. The virtual world, we can still read your body language, and it's, I guess, more obvious of what are you doing on the other side. So I guess one of the things that the virtual world brought in the past, residents, and this is going to just be my pointer, in the past, residents used to memorize what they want to say. And they over-rehearsed themselves that they became mechanical, as if they're just rehearsing and saying it in a very mechanical way. In the last 2 years, things that I saw were they were having maybe their phone, as you said, or pieces of paper in front of them, and they're just literally reading from it, which just makes me not feel them as genuine as they would if they were just speaking from themselves. So it's good to practice. It's okay to keep little notes next to you and you're just glancing at them. But if you're fully distracted looking at your phone on the side, that's a big turn off for me. It just makes me feel it's not really who you are, which brings us to what Dr. Abdul Wahid said is be yourself, because you're going to find your fit by being yourself. You're not going to be comfortable pretending to be somebody else. We want to love you as you. Don't pretend to be somebody else. If you're not in the culture of American football, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to pretend to like American football. I don't like it, so it's okay. My biggest pointer is just remember, these are maybe 10, at most 20 minutes with every interviewer. That impression will last. So make it a unique, good impression of you. You want to leave me with me remembering and saying, wow, that was a good interview, that I really enjoyed talking with this person. So find what it is that you're good at and be yourself talking about it.
Thank you very much. And we will go to Dr. Naman Ashraf. He's a psychiatry program director. Dr.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to the ones in the US. Good evening to the ones joining us from Pakistan. So that's interesting in some ways. I was thinking about how I can connect it to the topic because a lot has been said, and I think it's the same advice. Dr. Jamshed talked about it, Dr. Wahid, Dr. Al-Tarifi, and I echo all of that. And now I'm at the last. So how do I say something that's memorable, right? So I think that's good because that's what I want you to do. We are interviewing so many applicants. What can separate you from the others? So now I have to come up with something that you can remember me as well, because these are the same thing you'll hear from all the program directors. And that's how I want you to approach the interview. So once you got the invite from the program, that means they like you. they've gone through their, at least some of the important things in your application, like your scores and your letter of recommendation, something that they believe that if this person matches, it'll be fine. Why are they inviting? They want to confirm that information. So your honesty is going to be very important. Everything in your application. The other thing is, are you a good fit? All program directors want to see, are you a good fit for our program or not? Like for psychiatry, it's a 4-year program. We don't want to live with you for 4 years if you're not a good fit. It's going to be a trouble every single day. So we really want you here if you fit with our culture and our program. So those are the things we are looking at. And the most important thing that I think for me, especially, is to find out the professionalism. Because the other things, when residents are here, you can remediate other things like they say patient care, their medical knowledge, other stuff. Professionalism is very hard to remediate. If people have certain type of characteristics they live with all their lives, it's very hard to do it in 4 years. So that's why we want to talk to them. So keep those things in mind. So that's why you want to come across as a professional individual, which means if you have to do the virtual interview, are you logging in time, which is recommended is 15 minutes before your time starts. If you're doing a virtual interview, do you have your presence well on the screen, which means good lighting and good camera angle and everything. And for that, I would recommend one of our YPC member, Dr. Asra Nayab, did a video that Dr. Sadiq Naveed had sent you guys. Please go through it. It has all the do's and don'ts, how you need to do it, how you have to set up your camera, and how you need to appear in the interview. One thing that I have heard, we get feedback from everyone. Anybody that you will talk to will get feedback from, coordinator, residents, anyone that you would speak to that day. So I always ask my coordinator, who do you like? Who do you think is going to be a better fit? And he would tell me, this guy didn't even say anything. Like initially when they logged in, there were 5. He was just a quiet person, but this person was very interesting. So find some conversation starters, good ones. Weather is always a good one. If you're into sports, they're good. Avoid religion and politics. Those are the 2 no-go areas, but the rest is all open. Find something, talk about something. And so they remember you. So when I get feedback, they have something to say about you. Besides that, practice is very important. Do your virtual interview with someone that you know, somebody who is in professional setting. Could be in GME, could be in some other, say they are HR manager in some other firm, but they are used to taking interviews. So then they can tell you how you appear on the screen. Record that interview on Zoom. Listen to your own tone of voice. See if the camera angle is good, if you're looking into the eye of the camera or not, and how is the lighting. So go through that experience. Again, people have mentioned your cell phone, it should be off. Try to find a quiet place. You can, sometimes people think I go to one of the rooms in my home and it'll be fine. Anything can happen. Kids can walk in and you cannot stop them. So find a quiet place where you can do it. And if this happens, just let them know about it beforehand. And I think it'll be fine. One of the things that's been happening in interviews now more recently is a behavioral questioning that a lot of interviews do it. Definitely all psychiatry interviews, they have behavioral questioning, but I've heard other fields, they're asking those questions. So you want to prepare yourself for those. The reason is they will try to put you on the back foot and they just want to see how you handle it. There's no right or wrong answer kind of thing. They're not looking for that, but they're looking for that you are in the norm of the okay answer. But how do you take it? That is stressful moment, right? So like one of the very weird ones that I've heard, which I would never ask, but people were asked, is about, they would go about, is there anything you don't like about your parents? Like that will put you on the really back foot. Like, how do you talk about your parents' weaknesses? But this was asked. So that's why I'm telling you, there may be behavioral questions and there may be something that annoys you. You have to keep it calm. So practice some of the behavioral questioning. And then we'll take questions as we go on. So just wanted to share some things, and it's exciting, it's great, and good luck with everything. And I'll end here for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashraf. And now I have to say something which is gonna make people remember me. My internet connection is a little unstable. One quick thing, remember about time zones and the time difference. Pakistan or outside of US, there is Eastern Standard Time Zone, there is Central Standard Time Zone and Pacific. So pay attention to that and how does that relate to where you are. We still have, roughly about 6 minutes to go into the QA. Anyone has any thoughts they feel like, that they can add?
I can add another just pointer here. Is I always say, match. So how we do interviews, we're a panel of interviews. We're 4 of us. Each one of us interviews, and then we end up talking. And we're different people. So some of us are, live and energetic. Some of us are very strict. So it's funny, and I guess you guys from psychiatry might understand where I'm going with this. Is that our perception of the other person carries a lot of who we are. So I tend to tell candidates, match your interviewer. If you come to interview with me and I'm laughing and I'm asking you, how is your day? And I'm telling you jokes and I'm asking you about what was the last movie you watched, it's okay to loosen a little bit till to the level of professionalism. But if I am okay, so how is your day? Okay, I understand. You can't be, sitting in the back of your chair like this and talking to me. That will be a big turnoff. So just match your interviewer.
And I think that's really important when we talk about be yourself. I think that you can take it in a very casual manner. It's mostly about, when you talk about your strengths, weaknesses, and experiences, you don't have to make hyperbolic statements. So one question I have before we go on to, question and answer session. By the way, we have 130 participants in the webinar, and we have another 170 watching through YouTube. So roughly about 300 people. My question is, let's say if an interview
You're breaking up,
invitation.
Dr. Naveed.
Okay, so my question is that, what should they be doing when they get an interview invite? What are some of the things that can be done to prepare for the interview? So who wants to take on the question? So I have an interview in about 2 to 3, let's say 2 to 3 weeks. And what should I be doing now to prepare for that interview? So whoever wants to take on that question.
I'll let others give more details. I just simply want to say that if you can do even for yourself, just talking in and making a video and see how you come across. I think it surprises me even when I'm listening to myself, when this recording actually gets onto our YPC page, how different I sound or how I look. So I think that will be worth your time. And it doesn't have to be an interview session that you record. Just do a recording with someone to see how you're coming across on the video.
Right. And I'll add, if you have an interview in 2-3 weeks, so besides prepping yourself, general recommendation that we gave for the interview, familiarize yourself with the website of the program. You want to know about that program. So when you go prepared. And based on that information, you will come up with your questions for different faculty that will interview you. So before the interview, you'll get your itinerary for the interview, and they will let you know you will spend this much time with the program director, then with the core faculty, this is the person. Go online, find out what their interest areas are, and try to come up with questions that can start conversations with them. People remember you. I mean, we are all humans. So if you are talking to me about my interest area, I'm going to remember you, obviously, if it's a good conversation. So that's one thing I would add.
Thank you very much. And I have to turn off my camera. Hopefully my voice will be a little bit more clear. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely better. I have one more comment. I'm so sorry, Dr.
Go ahead.
One more comment is, oh goodness, what was I going to say? I completely lost it. Dr. Ashraf was talking about, what were you saying about
the website?
preparing?
Familiarize yourself with their website and come up with questions of their interest areas.
Yes, I've lost it. I've lost my
So
thought.
maybe
I'll share it later.
So maybe if we can come back to that. So I will start with the formal question answer session. I will start with Dr. Al-Draifi. When people come from, let's say, Pakistan, India as an IMG, a lot of them, they have done some work in surgery, OBGYN, emergency medicine. Emergency medicine does not really exist in Pakistan as a specialty, but they have worked in really high competitive specialties, and they feel like they cannot get into those specialties here, but they want to continue with their passion of medicine. So let's say if they switch to the specialties of internal medicine and family practice or psychiatry, how should they approach it, when it is asked during the interview? And we don't want to give sort of, a template answer, which everyone can use. So just if you can just guide people.
Yeah, for example, for me in internal medicine, I just want to be convinced that this is not just a backup and you are going to be miserable through the years you're with me because you didn't fulfill your own dream of being a surgeon or being, emergency medicine candidate. Some people will come and say, they're honest. I appreciate honesty. They might say, I was doing ENT, and the closest thing to that will be me coming and doing primary care where I still can practice that. Or as a surgeon, I still love my skills. So my plan is to go into critical care eventually and still use my surgical skills into that. Some people will come and say, yes, that was my passion when I was there. I didn't find myself through it. I found myself when I was doing that. I will still, spend time with patients. And I found I am more passionate about sitting and spending time with patients. So I found myself more into internal medicine, family medicine, psychiatry. And this is what I found myself more to. And that's why I decided to switch and fulfill my dream. And this is my dream. So still be genuine. If it is a backup for you, and this is just my final advice, if you always wanted to be a surgeon, and I understand it's difficult to be a surgeon, there is a way still to be a surgeon as long as you're just living that dream. Don't settle. I know this you might not hear this, but don't settle. If it is your dream and you're good at it and it's what makes you happy, keep on doing that, fighting for that dream, and you're going to find a person who's going to say yes to you. Don't settle because you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life.
Thank you very much. And please, if anyone else wants to add, please jump in. We want this to be a conversation. There's a question, when we talk about, and I will keep rotating the mic among the panelists. There's a question, how to address the question about strength and weaknesses when a program asks for it. Dr. Numaira Jamshed, do you want to take on that question?
Yes, sure. I think that what I found last year in mock interviews is everyone has a really, it seems to have a relatively easy time about strengths because everyone wants to share, all the things. It's the weaknesses that becomes the difficult part. And a lot of times we think that we have to answer it in a way that may come across negative. So one of the things I would say is first of all, make sure you're confident, right? What Dr. Al-Draifi is saying, that if you are switching, you want to be confident with your response and just be honest. When you're talking about your weakness, you have to do the same thing. My weakness is that I get distracted, for example, if you want to say that, but then don't stop there. I want to hear how you overcome it or how you plan to overcome it. What people will usually do is that, they will state their weakness and then they will just not say anything further. Finish that sentence, that this is my weakness. And everybody has to find some weakness in themselves because we're not all perfect, right? We're human beings. We're just not perfect. That's just how we're born. So figure out, and if you're having a hard time figuring out what your weakness is, then seek out. Ask your parents, ask your friends, ask your spouse, ask your partner, ask anyone you work with. And you can tell them that, you have to make sure that you let them know you're not going to be offended. right? It's hard to hear from someone else what your weakness is, but I think that's a good exercise to go through. And you can tell them that I want you to respond in the context of me as a physician, or you can say, I want you to respond in the context of me as a friend, whatever you like. But ask someone if you're struggling with what your weakness is. So hopefully that answers. I'm sure other people have more to add.
If I can build a little bit on it, I think weaknesses and strengths is not just an interview question. This should be your lifelong search. And, this is something which is going to put you on a path of success in your life. Like understanding weaknesses and strengths question is usually the interviewer is trying to judge how self-aware you are. And if you kind of give some made up answer, it's not going to help anyone. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help the interviewer. So, and nowadays there are a lot of different stuff out there on the internet. I mean, you probably are younger generation, probably know better than us. Like, go on internet and find Myers-Briggs is a great, and it's basically out there. Myers-Briggs inventory. I do that for all of my residents when they come in, and I tell them I learned a lot about myself just doing that inventory, and then looking at if a resident I find who has a strong judgment personality, like who's going to make a conclusion at the sound of anything versus a perceptive person, they're going to be very different. If you have a very strong trait, how do you deal with it? Like, for example, someone with in simple words, if you don't want to use very technical terms, simple terms, if someone has laid back personality and is the last minute deadline person, is the last person who's going to put in stuff for the deadline. What you can do is to deal with, there are different ways to deal with that, putting in alarms or setting a deadline 2 weeks ahead of the deadline, and that can help you. So that's your weakness and how you overcome that. And you have to figure that out for yourself, and don't just, take a made up answer and give it to other people. People will be able to judge it.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul-Wahid. Since I have you here, usually the interview will start with, tell me about yourself or introduce yourself. How to take that question?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions, actually. It comes in many ways, and I'll say 2-3 ways this question is going to come. Tell me something about yourself. Introduce yourself. And many other ways it can come to you. And that is your time to actually tell your story that I was talking about earlier. And that should not take more than 5 minutes, okay? And I am actually notorious. This is one of my weaknesses. I talk a lot. If you let me talk like Dr. Naveed, I can talk for the whole webinar, And so I learned it over time to what they now call in leadership elevator pitch. You got to get your thing ready, and be ready for the right moment when someone asks you, like, hey, what do you want to do? And then you should have that ready within 4.5 minutes, should be go. And that's what you need to do. Think about your story, like who you are, what you have done, significant things in your life, and rehearse that for 4.5 minutes exact. And tell that in one go. It shouldn't come out like, you're just like sort of, giving a rehearsed answer. But if and you take pauses and you give your speech, people will know, whether that's the truth or not. And then what's going to happen is the interviewer is going to pick some things out of what you just told and start talking. So, your story should contain genuine things in your life and genuine professional stuff. And, that could be your achievements. And achievements, let me actually use different words, is competencies and accomplishments. Think about what are your competencies as a professional and what have you accomplished out of those, and tell them in a manner that does not come out to be arrogant. Now, once you say them like very brief one-liner about each and what you're looking for in your life, the interviewer will pick up questions out of that and expand. And that will keep the interview actually in your area, not in the interviewer area.
Yeah, thank you.
How about we do this as an exercise, Dr. Walid? How about we ask Dr. Ashraf?
Tell about myself.
So that people can see. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
But the problem is we don't want to give the template. That is the issue.
No, not template. Just tell us about yourself. You.
So I am from a small town in Pakistan. I grew up there. And then when I, like from very early age, one of my uncles was a doctor. So I got to spend some time with him. So I got really inspired about the medicine. And over the weekend when we would be together, sometime the conversation would go towards that. So that was my early introduction towards the medicine. So, and that's one thing that I found that myself gravitating towards, like, uh, learning about it was at some level also challenging, like what's going on, and interesting for me to learn about medical issues, but also at the level where I would see that he would spend some time to give back to the community, like he's doing volunteer work and all that. That thing also attracted me towards it. So when I was growing up in my college years, and I got myself involved in some volunteer work, so that's where I got to spend some time with people, and I thought that's where my passion lies. What are the fields where I can do that as a profession? One of the fields was medicine. So that's how I ended up in the medical school. And when I finished my medical school, the question for me was the best place to train. Where should I go? Where's the most advancement? And I looked at different places, UK, US system. The US system attracted me because of some of its strengths, which is one of the leading research that's happening in the field. So that's how I had my path towards the US, came here, and then since the main passion was to work with people, connect with them, the field that I gravitated towards was psychiatry. That was the field where I could spend time with them, I could learn about them, and at the same time could help them out. So ended up choosing that field and work in that, and like you're asking me right now, I'm not talking as an interview, I'm just genuinely saying, like, for my job. So
No, I know. And
I've done psychiatry.
that's what I want everybody to see, that you
Exactly.
can see how genuine Dr. Ashraf is, and
Right.
that what he's saying is,
and
and at every stage of our life, yeah, we do different things. I mean, if
Right,
you
and-
ask me now, I might say something very different than what I said 20
Exactly.
years ago.
If
And
I
then the
get
end,
a
I
chance,
would add what Dr. Waleed was saying. I would add something like, in my pastime, I like to listen to the music and play some instrument or whatever, because that's my lead into the next question where interviewer is going to
Yes.
ask me, oh, tell me more
It's the
about your
hook.
hobby. So that
Yeah.
hook. So that's how I would say it. And the other thing I would say, why I started off with that I'm from a small, if I say I'm a small town or a big town, I would connect it with, because I would say I'm interested in your program because it's in the rural town, it's a community program. I grew up in that area, and that's where I want to be. So that's why I structured it that way.
You know, that's excellent. I would add that your tell me about yourself should touch at least 3 domains. Okay, whatever way you want to answer, we're not providing you template, but like the structure should have 3 domains. First is your personal domain. You know, who you identify yourself as a person, who do you think you are, right? You know, where you grew up, as Dr. Ashraf was talking about, like small town. Second domain is you should touch upon your medical school experience, okay? And who you can touch upon what brought you to medical school, or significant medical school experience that may have, you know, sort of push you towards a certain specialty and your personal characteristics. And third domain is what would you like to do in future with all those 2? So these are the 3 domains you should touch upon when someone asks you that question.
And if
I'll just add, sorry, go ahead.
Just make sure, you know, by the end of your statement, you want the interviewer to connect with you and come out with, oh, I really like this person, I like their story, they understand who you are, that they connect with you, either by giving them that hook or by making yourself, and I'm not making, but sounding as if you are that person in true life.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ashraf, maybe 30 seconds, and then I want to move on to other questions.
Sure. Oh, no, I just wanted to say one thing. I think Dr. Wahid shared it last year. We're talking about it. Another way of thinking about, tell me about yourself, is majority of the times it's just the icebreaker. So that would take your pressure off of it. It's the icebreaker. So he I think he shared in one of the interviews, he asked an applicant, tell me about yourself. And she was like, yeah, it all started one of the winter of 1980 or whatever. So then they had a good laugh. So I think you can also make it that way, but it depends on your interviewer. And then go into talking about something. A lot of time, what some people make mistake is, I am Nauman Ashraf. So do not start with your name. They already know about it. But to get around that anxiety of the first sentence, that's why I said choose something. I grew up in an urban town of 100,000 people or in a rural town of 50,000, and in the end connected. The reason I'm interested in your program because it's situated in this rural town, it served this population. I grew up in this environment. That's where I feel more comfortable. I'll feel connected with the patient. So that's how you can control it.
Thank you. And I think let's move on to next question. And we can go to Dr. Al-Tarifi. Whether when it's coming to you, candidates are giving answers, whether you like long answers or you like short and crisp answers.
It depends. I don't stop long answers unless they become boring and out of context of the question. Sometimes candidates answer a different question. I ask them a specific thing and they're taking that answer going into a different thing that they wanted to say. There's a smart way of doing that. So a short, but not short to say, I'm not interested. I know I'm making this. Sometimes a very short answer can sound like you're just doing a pre-closure, you're not really motivated and interested about this interview. But sometimes too long is boring that you don't allow the interviewer to get to know you in a better way. Everything in moderation is good. Get to your point in a very good way.
And I think that's why we want to practice those interviews. We don't want to feel rehearsed, but we want other people to tell you whether it's a really long question or whether it's really short question. And coming from countries where, English is not the native language, sometimes the vocabulary can come off wrong too. So for example, I have a junior from a medical school alumni, and I asked him, he's persistent in applying for medicine. And I asked him and he said, what can I do? I'm stubborn. So he could have said, I'm passionate about internal medicine. Mm-hmm. That's why I keep applying. So this is why I think practice is so important. But let's go on to Dr. Numaira Jamshed. So when we talk about, our qualities, our strengths, and Dr. Waheed mentioned that you should not come as arrogant. How can you describe it, but still, be humble about it?
So that's a great question. I mean, if anyone was to ask me, I might start with. So first of all, we expect an answer. Secondly, I might start with I've been told, or I feel, or I may even say I have worked hard to develop a strength. And these are, and then I'll just say what my strength is and how maybe even try to give an example. So I think that I may not, you don't want to start with, my strengths are, number one, number two, number three. It's not a essay question or an MCQ. It's a conversation. So if you ask me that question, I'd be like, I think that one of my strengths is that I'm very curious. And, my sister tells me that, if you have to ask a question, ask my older sister. So I would tend to give a little bit of an example, but you also want the strength to, when you're talking about it, my tone is not, I'm a very curious person. No, my tone is very humble, or at least it should be. It should be a softer tone that these are my strengths. I'm smiling because, it's maybe there's something that I think is a strength, but somebody else doesn't think that. And then when I go to weaknesses, that's where I usually become a little more serious, because now I'm recognizing that I have a weakness that I have to work towards. I really like Dr. Waheed's idea of trying to see if you can look at your strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think I would. I don't know if Dr. Waheed agrees or not, but I wouldn't state that, I did the Myers-Briggs test, and on that test, my strengths are this. That's not what you want to say. You want to see if the test resonates with you and you agree with it, and see if you can come up with an example. You might, but you may want to use some of the words that, especially we will talk about cultural competence in a bit, that they will understand. For example, one of the words might be a doer. You know, you can say, I'm a doer. If someone gives me a task to do, I will do that. And I think that that's a strength. And I've been told that that has been very helpful. However, in doing so, sometimes I forget, you know, and then you can do that.
I was already worried saying Myers-Briggs in front of like two psychiatrists here,
I know.
psych PDs, and
Yeah.
then like now you jumping in on that, I feel like I'm doomed.
No, I think it's really important. You know,
I agree.
we do all this later on, but I really appreciate that you do that for your residents. I didn't get to do that until I was faculty. And it's so important for us to learn our strengths and weaknesses. And I'm actually okay if residents, when they're interviewing, their strengths are something very simple. My strength is that I have really good memory, and I remember really well, or it's something, whatever you want to say. Just be genuine. But I think from the program director point of view, the reason we're asking you that is we're still trying to figure out if you fit in. We've already looked at your credentials. Your credentials are great. You deserve the interview. Now we just want to see if you and I fit together. For, like Dr. Naveed said, 4 years is a long time, right? So I'm sure Dr. Waheed may have some more to add to that. I think that's a really important question to practice.
No, I completely agree. I think, your approach of even describing, even if you know this from many sources, describing and reporting it is that this is from consistent feedback from, or heard from your colleagues, your sibling, your friends. That conveys a better message than, saying that, oh, I went to a psychiatrist and I was told that this is my weakness, or, Myers-Briggs. I was just giving a suggestion. So I totally agree with you.
Thank you. And there was one question which was a little different. Can you mention some of the things that happened during the interview with a candidate that was immediately a turnoff, and you said, no, I'm not going to take this person? I can share mine. We were interviewing this clinician, not the residency applicant. And as we were doing the interview, she was typing and replying to the emails. So that was a turnoff right then and there. So if all of you can, like in 30 seconds, can give some examples that are immediate turnoff for you that can happen in the interview. Dr. Al-Tarifi, you want to start?
Sure. So I guess professionalism is one of those things. So how you interact with everybody in the panel says a lot. Some candidates feel that our coordinators or program managers don't have a say. So how they talk with me or different faculty is different from how they talk with our coordinator. And I remember one incident before where, one of our candidates, this is before virtual interviews, came to our coordinator at the time and told her, hey, can you just carry my bags for me? And that was an immediate turn off. Yeah. So being respectful to everybody is a big key. Another example kind of aligns with typing emails, but this candidate we had our, this is again before virtual interviews, we have all our candidates sit in chairs outside. So this candidate, in between sessions, everybody's interacting with each other, and it's meant for them to sit that we see how they interact with each other, was just kind of not tuned in and was putting their music earbuds in between, so didn't want to talk with anybody else and just kind of kept their earbuds. So stay interactive. We leave them in a room, that way they interact with each other and so on. So how you deal with everybody in the panel and with the other candidates matters. I guess the last point is that the arrogance. The arrogance is a turnoff for me. And I think for everybody. So when you're coming off so arrogant, so full of, your body language says it, the words and how you say it matter. It makes me wonder why you're interviewing with me if you feel that you're better than than this place. So, and it just pours out during the interview. It's like they're laid back, they're talking, and the language of, so what do you guys do up there, and how is it in your world? Or so that's a big turnoff for me.
Yeah. Dr. Ashraf, do you want to share anything?
Right. No uninvited hugs. Doesn't matter which culture you come from. No uninvited hugs. Do not hug people around when you're interviewing. It's not in person right now, so it's probably probably would be okay. I've had some situations where, I have a coordinator who's American, and he has had some hugs, so it gets out of, so it becomes an issue. If they cannot back up their CV, that's a problem for me. A lot of people, in an attempt to have research on their CV, they join a group that's working on some project, and they are the fourth or fifth author. It's fine. But when I ask them about what was the project about, what did you do, and they cannot talk about it, and sometimes they're like, oh, this was 3 years ago, so I don't really remember the details. That's not okay. It's the whole purpose I'm interviewing is I want to know that what you put on your CV is accurate. You are being honest. Now you can say my contribution there was this, and you talk about that, which is okay. You should be able to talk about your CV. When anyone, any faculty, any program director asks you, do you have any questions for me? No, I have no questions is a wrong answer. You always have some questions. So that's why you want to go through their website and have any question. You can just ask program director, easy thing you ask about what's your vision for the program. Simple. Ask something. Saying that I don't have any questions shows that you are not prepared for the interview. These are some things that are expected.
Okay. Dr. Abdul Wahid.
Yeah, I would expand on Dr. Ashraf's last point. I think, if you're exhausted your questions already, you're meeting the last person of the day, it's okay to say that, like, I've asked my questions from others, but I want to know your point of view, your perspective. It could be a resident at the end, you want to know resident perspective, or the PD perspective, or the faculty, whoever this person, you want to, say that and ask what may be the particular question. I think the other things that I've noticed that, kind of put off is the biggest thing that puts off is presence, and presence is with engagement. I've seen people kind of come in and be nervous. You could have some anxiety issues or nervousness, or know yourself ahead of time, and be prepared for that. And if you rehearse before or practice before, Zoom fatigue is real. Like being on Zoom for a whole day and at the end of the day might be the most influential person, no matter whether that's a resident or a coordinator or program director, whoever the last person is, maybe the most influential person. Influence comes in many ways and shapes. So you want to keep your presence all the way towards the end. And the last thing is not related to the interview, but your post-interview communication. Not only during interview, don't be perceived as a bother. You want to make your presence in the group settings where you're prominent, but if you have a kind of a personality where you want to jump in to answer the question first, I would say resist the urge. In most cases, maybe first one you did it the first, but the second time, third time, don't be the person who's going to be jumping in first every time. Don't be the person who's going to be waiting for the last minute every time. Keep a middle ground.
Dr. Jamshed, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think everybody said.
Okay, thank you. And there was, this different question. I'm trying not to answer the question that's going to give template answer to people. One interview, one person asked if someone has stuttering issue, how to address that. So I did a mock interview a couple of years ago for a candidate, and he told me upfront that I have a stutter.
Yes.
So in this way, I'm ready and I'm more prepared for that, accommodate that person. So it's okay to mention that. If sometimes people have tics, mention that tic, right? And so as long as you were mentioning at the start of the interview, I think that's good enough. I will move on to next question unless someone wants to answer it differently. Next question would be how to talk about your clinical experience, your accomplishment, and how should we refer them. Dr. Jamshed, do you want to take on this question?
Let's see. I think what I would be looking for there is a little passion and commitment. So one of the things, I think we've said this before, you have to answer the question in a way that your last few words feed into the question, the next question from the program director or whoever's interviewing. And it's not easy. I know it's very easy for us to say all this to you guys, by the way. It's not easy, okay? But you want to think of a way of bringing the interviewer back to your story, to you, right? So let's say that someone asks you a question. Let me see. So let's say if somebody asks you a question about, why do you want to do family medicine? Simple, right? And you say, well, I really enjoyed this, and I spent some time doing family medicine with in the US, and this is what happened. You want to leave something at the end where the interview will then say, well, tell me a little bit about that experience. And that's where you get, we see that your posture changes, you're excited, you're like, well, during that experience, I did not realize that family medicine in the US it covers so many arenas or specialties. There's pediatrics, there's OB, and that's really exciting to me. But what was most exciting to me was this. Again, I don't want to template it for you guys. I can talk a lot about. So if you give me 2 minutes, let me tell you. So I did general surgery, Rua, so that, love general surgery, absolutely did not, wanted to keep doing it. Life happens, had to change, had to decide between, what should I do now? I have to do something. And I had to think hard. So when they asked me during the interview, the program director was like, well, you came here to do general surgery, all your letter of recommendations. And this was a post-match interview. And I said, you know what? I told them, I said, yes, I wanted to be a surgeon. And maybe I still do. But I see family medicine as a way for me to continue to do that. I love being part of that. And with family medicine, I'll be able to use my skills in OB. I'm thinking about doing an OB fellowship after I graduate. I also think I'll be very useful, the skills that I've learned in an office-based setting where I can do procedures. So you keep going with that, and then they'll, and when you talk about your clinical experiences, what will happen is if your clinical experience was just to get a letter of recommendation, we will see it, because you will not know what you learned from that experience. So please, whatever experience you learned, think about what is it that you really gained from it, and that will come across during the interview.
Thank you.
Again, easy for me to say, but yeah, go ahead, Noman.
Dr. Ashraf and then Dr. Abdul Wahid.
Yeah, I just have one comment and I'll add to the question. So one interesting comment, when Dr. Naveed asked Dr. Jamshed about this question, she said, okay, let me see. She took her time, organized her thought, and then she answered. That's what you need to do. If you are asked a question, you're not ready for it, do not have abnormal pause. You can always say, that's an interesting question. Let me think about it. That's totally fine. And then organize your thought process and then answer. So that was a good example. I would just add, they're asking about your accomplishments. You need to find a balance, right? You don't want to come across like very narcissistic and cocky, and then, but at the same time, you want to talk about your best areas. So the best way I've found is finding out an example. Like suppose you can say, if you have done any, for example, done any volunteer work, you can say, as president of the Lions Club, I have learned a lot of leadership skills like this, or conflict resolution skills, or I used to work with like 20 other people. I used to manage that team, or I did this trip to somewhere in an earthquake or whatever, and I had a team of 10 people. So I managed them. I learned my interpersonal skills. So you can talk about those strengths in a way in a context and in a story way, rather than just saying, I'm a great leader, I'm this and I'm that.
Thank you. Dr. Abdul Wahid.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, because it's the same domain or theme. That question was asked earlier, like if you've done other specialty coming in, and then Dr. Jamshed just touched upon family medicine, in the same context. The way I look at them is like when I came in to this country, I was in urology for a bit before coming to US. And if you looked at previously, my interest has been all over the place. Like the only one specialty where I was called for honors in my medical school was family medicine or primary care, like, in my final year. And I was a general medical officer in the government health system, and then got into urology and spent time there, and so on and so forth. So there's a story that I tell. But the thing is, if you ask me even today, I literally can do anything in medicine. I would enjoy anything, but I would really like to do everything. And that is why I'm in family medicine, And that's been my story all over. I still like to do round on inpatient with residents. I mean, I do procedures, I do outpatient stuff. I don't do obstetrics anymore, but just because of the call burden and my administrative responsibilities, and two beautiful, like 5 and 6 year old girls at home, and so on and so forth. But yeah, you got to know, why for yourself, and be able to say that.
Thank you. And I think this is really important. And it also sort of answers the question, why a certain specialty? So find your own reasons. Why are you doing something? There must be a reason. And you cannot describe other people's reason for your reason. This is why, template answers are, really, not liked. Couples match. Dr. Al-Tarifi, how should one candidate talk about couples match? I think there were 2 or 3 questions about couple match. If your significant other is not being interviewed at the program, how can you talk about that, or how can you bring it in the interview?
So yeah, they have to just explain, and I guess the couple have to understand first within themselves what are their musts and must nots. Are they really wanting to be in the same program? Are they okay to be in the same state? Are they okay to be in the same region? Or it's what do they want? Because that's what they need to explain to me. Because I had for example, before, couples where we liked the wife but we didn't like the husband, or the opposite. And I will ask them, okay, if it's what's a breaker, a rule breaker for you? And they will say, we just need to be in the same states or same. So that way it makes me feel better about, am I still ranking them or not? So I guess in simple words, explain. If you're saying to me, no, we have to be in the same hospital, and I really didn't like the other partner, that means I'm not gonna rank you either, and it's gonna make you lose your chances. Be flexible within yourselves too. And I understand long distance relationships, especially if there's kids involved and so on, is difficult. I understand family, but still be flexible. So within the city, within the state is still doable. So you don't lose chances. Explain that to the program. Say, yes, we're applying together. We would love to be in the same hospital if that's doable. That way we can arrange our schedules together, but we're still okay to be in the same region. And you can even go to the extent of he got interviews at other places. So I think our chances are good. That way you still have your chance of.
Thank you. And is it okay if we go 15 minutes over time until 1:15? And we have a lot of questions. So if our panelists wants to take on some questions and answer them, I will really appreciate that.
Yeah, I answered a few that were easy. Yeah.
Thank you. And there are a lot of them. Dr. Jamshed, we want to talk about a little bit about, when you are interviewing with the panelists, how to find things that, you both can talk about, like things of common interest with panelists.
Yeah, so we actually do this in implicit bias training for faculty as well. So remember, you're not the only one on the spot. We are on the spot too. Okay, we are constantly trying to find common ground, but for us to find common ground, you have to give us something. And we may ask. And that idea, I think Dr. Ashraf touched upon it, is if you end with some hobby that I'm also interested in, then I will pick up on that and start talking about it a little bit. And then you better be ready, though. You can't say that you love cricket and then, not know about it. So I think to find common ground, somebody asked a question in the chat, can we reach out to the program coordinator to find out who's interviewing us? I think that's absolutely okay, because you're trying to find common ground and see who you're interviewing with. Is there something that we can talk about? Coming from a different country can be a common ground if you have somebody who might tell you that they're from a different country. Never assume, by the way, that a faculty is not from the US. So you don't want to ever say that, are you from Pakistan? Unless they volunteer that information. Other common grounds typically happen around, your interest in maybe fellowship. So let's say you're interviewing with someone who's a critical care specialist, and you also think that and so you can relax and say, I've been thinking about what I might want to do after my residency, and I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit about critical care. How has it been for you? So I don't know if that answers the question, Sadiq, but
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some logistical questions that I can answer, and Dr. Abdul Wahid is answering some of them. Internet issues, power outage. I think be ready for that and have a backup plan. I've been having some internet issues, as you probably were able to imagine. So I, did a hotspot with my phone. You should have some sort of a backup plan and be ready for that. Background. I personally like background, like what Dr. Al-Tarifi, Dr. Abdul Wahid, and Dr. Jamshed has. If there is no option, you can do a virtual background, but don't do some of the like blur your background, but don't do like those fancy beach backgrounds and all of that. And the figure also comes distorted. Taking notes. I'm taking notes. I think it's okay to take notes, but let your interviewer know that I'm taking notes so you don't appear distracted. I will go to Dr. Ashraf. Post-interview, what are certain things that are good that should be done after the interview is done?
Right. So communication with the program is important. Now, they would tell you, doesn't matter whether you communicate or not, it's not going to impact your rank order list. We all are social animals. We like it when people reach out to us. What is the way to do it? I would suggest, after your interview is over, you want to send like a brief email. You can send it to the coordinator and send them to send it to the people you interviewed, or you can send it individually to the ones that you interviewed with, just thanking them for the opportunity that they invited you. And in that email, it doesn't have to be very long, but I always like when it's personalized, not like a general email format. So suppose you spend time with me and we talked about food, right? Can you connect in and mention it? I really enjoyed my talk. I'm just being general, but you could have talked about addiction or whatever. I really enjoyed my discussion with you on this and this and that. So I remember, okay, this is the person that I had a discussion with. And then you want to have another email, like around the rank order list around that time, a little bit before that. And that can also go to just the coordinator if you wish to. So when we sit down for the rank order list, it's all the faculty, coordinator, some of the residents, we take their feedback. So somebody knows that, okay, this person has kept some sort of contact. I wouldn't do more than 2, it gets too much, but I would at least reach out in some way. Some people like handwritten notes. So that's also an option. Email is totally fine these days. Some program directors like it. So if you want to do the first thank you note handwritten, they like it. They will actually keep it in their office. So that's a reminder for them too. So these are some of the ways, but do not nag them. Do not call them multiple times. Do not send multiple emails to the program director. Your best go-to person is through the coordinator, which is always fine. And you can stay in touch with them.
Thank you. And I know people are posting questions on YouTube too, but I'm having too many, internet issues. So I will share those links with our panelists and they can go in the chat and they can answer those questions. Dr. Al-Tarifi, one question that I have from you is about the body language, things that you pick, during the interview when it comes to body language.
So yeah, so first, up front, right position. Don't be laid back. Don't have, like, if I'm seeing your crossed leg up on the screen, that's a big issue of you're really relaxed and laid back. What Dr. Jamshed mentioned earlier, the distraction. I can't be talking with you and you're, turning your head on the side every second. It's a distraction for me too, and it's annoying. The face, a smile all the time. I'm interested, I'm listening, I'm engaged, and stay engaged, because it's funny how sometimes this is your one shot and you're so nervous that you're not listening to what you're being asked. So stay engaged. When somebody keeps saying, "Oh, can you repeat that for me too? Can you? What did you just say? Why are you here? This is your chance to show me who you are and leave an impression." So stay engaged, keep your smile, professional look. Stay away from distractions. Be in a place where I don't mind a child walking into the room. Sometimes I just ease it on them and say, it's okay. Let them stay with us. Let that child stay, because I don't want them to feel so nervous about that. But if you can avoid that, that will be great. But it's 10 to 20 minutes. Use it wisely, and your body language plays a big role in that.
Thank you very much.
I also want to mention that it's okay to appear vulnerable. It's okay to say, like Dr. Walid said, let me think about it, or that's all right. We know that everybody is, that's normal. But practice questions that just as soon as you ask a question and immediately you answer, we know that that's just something that you've memorized.
Thank you. And a few things, even it comes into the background, try to log in from a laptop or desktop. Make sure camera is at the right height, and make sure also your shoulders are visible up till here. Your head is visible. Try not to log in from an iPad or phone. I think that sort of distorts your screen. So it's really good. And smile. And smile, right? You're not meeting angels of death. Programs are also anxious about having good candidates. You are also anxious about going to a good program. So smile, but don't appear out of the norm.
Let me, Sadiq, I just want to give them an example. So when I started the webinar, this is how my laptop was. And I noticed that I'm looking down, right? And I got a book and I put it here. And now I'm a little bit more. So you can do these simple things to make sure that you're in eye contact.
Thank you. And Dr. Jamshed, since you are on the mic, older IMGs, what kind of questions they are asked, and how should they approach the interviews?
I think that older IMGs are probably the most interesting to me. They always have a story. I think you should be honest and tell your story, and just tell us what's happening. Everybody will have a different story. The recent ones I've heard might be, I graduated and I was working. Actually, Dr. Wahid will have a really good answer because he did medical officership and then you did urology. I'm not saying you were an older IMG, but you went through a different track. I spoke to someone yesterday who has graduated 10 years ago. And I just wanted to know, so what have you been doing? We're looking for you telling us your story of what happened in those last 10 years. It could be personal things, but only share what you want to share. It could be professional. What have you done in regards to that? If we see that you haven't done anything, clinically and stayed in touch, then that gives a different impression versus someone who's been doing that along with other things. So just be honest. Honestly, that's all you need to be.
Thank you. One last question, and then we'll wrap up. Red flags, Dr. Abdul Wahid, how to talk about your red flags, because they come in personal statement, become, a lot in interviews, and there is a lot of anxiety about talking about red flags. But before you answer the question, not all flags are red. So just know what is a red flag. All of us gonna have some deficiencies on our resume. So do you want to take on that question?
Yeah, I think, whatever you perceive as a red flag maybe possibly be perceived red flag by others, or common things. For example, if you have gaps in there, how do you explain those gaps? Be honest and know how that connects the story before and after. You don't have to make up stories. I mean, you have a genuine story. You just need to know how to tell that to the other person so that it connects. The red flags many times perceived by the programs, where they're like, oh, I don't want this person in my program. Most of the time is related to behavior during the interview or your communication with the program before or after. So just be careful with that. Most of the programs will have some kind of idea. They have their mission statement, or some, even if it is not written, they know what their mission is, like what the program is out to do. And then the fit, we talk about like the fit in the program. The fit means many things for different programs. I'll tell you, for my program, we talked a lot about the fit. And there was an article 3-4 years ago in General Graduate Medical Education that talks about, it's actually titled "The F Word for Recruitment in Residency." And F word is like the fit. And it talks about many times a kind of gestalt feeling, how does this person fit? And some programs would have actually done work on, for example, my program, we look at our mission and how different parts of the application or interview process fit in, including, something important to us is underserved, community, commitment to family medicine. And then the last thing is data orientation, research, and then retention after graduation. We are there to serve our community, so we want people to, not just be there for 3 years, train with us, and we are able to retain them. So then we look for all those characteristics of domains, in terms of defining our fit. So think about that when you go into the interview. Anything, for example, if you're from California and you apply to my program, that's not a red flag for most people, but that could be a red flag for us. Like, he's applying, or you're from, let's say from Pakistan or India. How are you going to connect the dots? Like, you're coming from a totally different place, and we're here to train and retain. You should be able to, connect. So you have to detect those red flags individually for each program, and be thorough. Once you get the interview invite, use that time specifically to, spend on searching the program mission. What are they out to do, and what are their strengths and weaknesses of the program? Be able to connect with that.
Thank you.
I really like what Dr. Walid has said about the mission statement, and actually programs are, you may interview at a program that their only mission is research, and you're going there for clinical, and you don't have a research background, or what Dr. Walid gave as an example. So I think that it's really important to review the mission statement. And I know we're past. I just also wanted to say, for example, for fellowships, I don't know if any one of you are doing that or not. I was an old graduate for my fellowship because I applied 4 years after my residency started, and then I did residency, then I worked for 3 years, and then I applied. So just need to have a story and explanation for what happened and what you're doing.
Thank you.
If I can add something, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just because of the red flag, this is something very common in explaining the gaps, and I see this a lot. And I'm talking to people who have family issues, and especially females who are afraid to say, I got married, I had kids, I had to take care of my kids to come back to medicine. It's okay. Honestly, takes, I would rather have an honest answer saying, I wanted to do medicine, I wanted to be a doctor all my life. I got married, I had to take care of my kids, but now I'm ready to come back. Residents or candidates will say, but what if the program director doesn't like that answer? Then you don't fit there. They're not going to understand your life circumstances. Tomorrow life will happen again. So answer genuinely and honestly, and it's okay to say, I took a break, I had a family, my father got sick, whatever family issue happened that caused that gap, it's okay to explain it. A lot of gap issues happen because visa issues. You know, you're stuck on visas for years and years. You wanted to come to America. You couldn't come like right after graduation. Say that. It's okay. I mean, and if they don't understand it, then maybe it's just not the right place for you.
Thank you. And actually, this was my last question. Someone asked a question about talking about parenthood, being, mother and father of 2-year-old. I think it's okay to talk about those things. These are the things that are part of life. Most people are young when they're doing residencies. It's expected for them to have kids and, be married. So we are left with 11 questions right now. So I will take one more question. So while, our panelists can answer all of them. Let me see what's a good question. So Dr. Abdul Wahid, maybe I can ask you this question. Can you ask at the end of the interview, can you ask this from the faculty, how did I do during the interview?
I usually don't recommend asking the question just like that. That can probably catch most people off guard. And most faculty are trained to give feedback, but they might not be expecting that at the end of the interview. One of the ways I like, some of the people have asked that question is they would like, is there, I really am looking forward to matching into your program. Are there any other things that I could do to increase my chances? And that might open the other person up, to say something or, entice the person to kind of think about like, how do I give feedback? And I'll tell you, one time 3-4 years ago, I did have a candidate who put me like on the spot, and I was like, okay, I got to give him feedback. This is testing my skills, of giving feedback. So I did give pretty direct feedback to that person, which he may not have liked it actually. So I would suggest not asking that question in that way. To find another way to ask that question.
Thank you very much. So with this, we'll wrap up our webinar. It has been a wonderful morning or noon. We were able to answer a lot of questions, and especially all the participants who have been here throughout the session. Really appreciate that. I really appreciate all the panelists for being here. Inshallah, we will stay connected. We'll talk more about interviews. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.